Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the Kawasaki Z500. That is the Z650 or Z500, Z650. And in this video, what I'm going to do is compare the practical differences between these two. So if you want to see the actual specs themselves, they're all available on the Kawasaki website, but there's a lot of things a spec sheet doesn't tell you that it actually matters to the owner or the buyer. So if you're looking at one of these two bikes and thinking maybe the 400 moving to the 500 has closed the gap on the 650 and you're not sure which one to get, or you don't know what has what maybe in the practical sense, that's what this video is going to be about. And I am going to say Z instead of Z, so for the Americans that want to know why I'm saying Z, I'm filming here in Canada. I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. This is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country, and they give me complete access to their entire product line. So if there's something that you want to know that maybe I don't get to in this video, make sure you let me know in the comments. Do me a favor, give it a like, even hit the subscribe button if you're interested in this stuff, and I'll come back to it again and again to make sure that you have a full video database of all the information that you want. All right, let's get going with this review. So there's a couple things that we need to clarify really quickly here, especially with this Z500. Most of you probably know if you're watching this, the Z500 is sort of the Z400 evolved, which of course is based on the Ninja 500. Now I did the Ninja 500 versus the Ninja 650 probably in the spring. This is fall of 2024. And the Z500 is an interesting model because what I have here is essentially the base model here in Canada. There is the SE model, but the ZSE is no longer the equivalent of the Ninja SE. One key difference is the Ninja SE has the keyless entry, keyless fob. The ZSE does not. So just for this video, what you need to know is that this model here is the base model compared to the Z650, which is sort of the standard, the only real model here between the two. So I think this is the best comparison if you're looking to save money and go with the Z, but keep in mind there is an in-between model with the 500cc shared engine, shared everything, or shared many things with this. Keep an eye on the spec sheet as well. I'll try to point out some of the differences between the Z500 and the Z500 SE, but that's not what this video is about, so that's what we're looking at here. Now the Z and the Z500 and 650 are both have Ninja derivatives, and they are a little bit different, but essentially they're sharing a lot of the same components. Some people like this just for the styling. Some people think it has a more upright seating position, and while they do have a slight little bit more upright seating position, it's more that your handlebars, or at least your hands, are wider apart on the handlebars as opposed to more tucked in on the clip-ons on the Ninja models. So the seating position is different. I don't find any one to be more comfortable or less comfortable. So you're really probably looking at these more for style than for pure comfort differences. Although there is a difference in the seating position, it is very mild, and the seats are actually the same height, same frame, that kind of thing on both of those bikes, the Ninjas and the Z models. So keep that in mind. It's not a drastic different seating position. If you like one over the other for styling, that's a great reason to buy it. But let's talk about these bikes in detail. We're going to start here at the front wheel, do a real good comparison bit by bit to show you some of the differences other than obviously just the engine to help you decide what's best for you. So if you've seen my videos before, you know I love to start at the front wheel because it talks about the manufacturer's intent, and you're going to see a lot of similarities here, but there are some key differences. First of all, right side up forks. So again, both of these bikes are designed to hit a certain price point, and they are pretty good values within their class. They're not upside down adjustable forks, although in the Ninja 650 line, you can get the Ninja 650 or the Z650. You can get that engine in the Versus 650, which does have upside down adjustable forks. Down here in the 500 though, you don't have any adjustability here. You have standard forks, and you've got a large disc brake. This disc is actually a hair larger than you're going to see on the Z650, but there's only one of them. The 650 has two. Down here you have pretty decent tires for the class, but certainly nothing to write home about. They are not super sport tires, but they are basically the same. Actually, they are the exact same as they put on the Z900 RS SE, which is the sport model of the Z900 Retro Sport, which is the bike that I own. So some people complain that, hey, that bike should have better tires, but they're actually decent tires on that bike for the road type driving you're going to do. If you take them to the track, you may want to upgrade them. That's kind of expected for the class. You do have an ABS ring in here, pretty good overall coverage from the fenders and stuff like that, so you don't need a fender or a radiator cover, but you would get that on the SE model here on the 500. One thing of note is these tires are a centimeter narrower than on the 650. Let's take a quick look at the 650 for a second. So taking a look at the 650 here, you do see a couple little differences. I mentioned that tire that's a little bit wider. It's a 120 width instead of a 110 width, so it's 120/70 ZR tires on this one. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that once you get into that wider size, you're basically the same size as super sport bikes. Pretty much everything has a 120 size to it. So the narrower tire, in theory, can offer you a little bit more flickability kind of thing back and forth, but this is going to give you a broader sense of tire sizes, or a broader range of tire sizes or tire brands that you could put on this. That being said, pretty much anything you would want to put on this to get stickier, you can also put on the 500 as well. So wider tire, traditional sizing. This still has what Kawasaki used to do on their bikes. They put the pedal style discs on there, so it's a styling thing. I used to talk about them. In theory, they could help with cooling, although let's be honest, I don't think they're helping as much with cooling because all of their super sport bikes have moved back to round discs without the pedals anymore. So it's just a styling thing they used to do. They still have it here on the Z650. And you're going to see a few of those things. The Z650 hasn't been updated in a little while, so a couple of things Kawasaki used to do. If you don't see the ABS ring in here, it's because it's on the other side. Remember, these are dual discs, really tremendous braking power here, but the same style of forks here. I believe they are a little bit larger tubes, that kind of thing, offering you a little bit more strength. But again, similar design here, and again, an upgraded Dunlop tire here. So it's not only is it a little bit larger, it's the Road Sport 2 on this, and that is an upgrade over the lower level Dunlop on the 500. Let's briefly talk about the engines of both these bikes. We're back here on the 500 here, and the 500 mil here is basically the 400, but it has the cylinders now, or the pistons, travel a little bit farther. So that's how they get the extra displacement. Now this is labeled as a 500. It's actually a 451cc. So there's basically a 200cc, just under 200cc gap between this bike and that bike. For marketing purposes, they call it the 500. I didn't name it, that's what they did, and it makes sense. To be fair to something like the Honda 500s, this is lighter weight and makes more power even though it has less displacement. So you really are competing with the 500 class, but that's what they do. So what that does is it means a lot of the components in here are carried over from the super reliable, super durable Ninja 400, Z400 model. So now you have the 500, which is going to give you all the reliability, but a little bit more torque basically throughout, a little bit more power basically throughout, and just a little bit more grunt is what this gives you than the 400, which is a nice addition. So you already had class-leading power when this was a 400. Now that it's a 451, you've maintained that sort of class-leading power, in general class-leading power, and of course the great reliability as well. Taking a look at the 650, you have a little bit more options here. First of all, same idea here. You have a 649cc, so the 650 is legitimate sort of marketing on this one. And this engine is in just about everything. So in the 500 engine, you used to just be able to get the 400 in the Z and Ninja 400. They introduced the Eliminator 450, or the Eliminator, whatever they call it, 500 I guess they call it, which is the same engine for that. So there's 3 bikes on that. On this bike, there's all kinds of, or in this engine, there's all kinds of bikes. So you can get the cruiser style in the Vulcan S, you can get the Versus model, which is in the 650, is sort of like a sport touring kind of thing with luggage and that kind of thing. You can get in the Ninja, you can get in the Z. Basically, any style bike you want, you can get this engine in. It's in a ton of bikes, it's been around for a while, and again, it also is super reliable. The biggest difference you're gonna notice of this is, yes, there is more horsepower. There's also a lot more torque throughout, so you're not having to rev this quite as much to get the power out of it. You do have a little more grunt to this, and this is a really, really good engine for just about any kind of riding. Nobody ever needs more than this. Sometimes people want more, but you never need more than this. So one of the key decisions you're going to have to make between the 500 and the 650 is seating position. So I'm about 6 feet tall, proportional 6-footer. As I jump on this, it is a compact bike. This is the 500, and what I like about it is it still feels very lightweight, which is part of what makes this bike so unique and so fun. It's a little bit more flickable side to side than the Z650, but it also gives you pretty good space. Now, one thing you're going to find if you have really huge feet, you may put your heel on this guard here. What I've found is that in the showroom that happens to me, but out riding on this bike where my foot would normally go when I actually ride, tap the brake, that kind of thing, it actually stays off that. So even though this is more compact, it certainly fits a 6-footer fine. You have a slight lean forward. I'm sort of facing the camera so you don't have a direct side view of me, but a slight lean forward. There's no real wind protection here. On the SE model, you have a little bit bigger cowl here you could get if you wanted that. But overall, both these bikes are going to have almost identical wind protection, which is very little, which is nice on a hot day, keeps the wind on you, and it kind of gives you the full experience of motorcycling, not so much fully protected, and also no buffeting. You're going to have clean air hitting your helmet, so if you've got a good aerodynamic helmet. While it makes some wind noise, it's a consistent, smooth wind noise as opposed to a buffeting wind noise. So that's going to be the same on both. Here's your seating position here on the 500, and we're going to jump across to the 650. And a couple things you're going to notice. We're going to talk about seats in a second when we get a little closer. This one, a little heavier to sit up. You don't notice a whole lot. I do feel like my hands are curled back just a tiny bit more, almost like the Ninja, but not a lot. Almost probably more upright on this one, maybe a little bit less lean to it. It does seem to be a little bit more distance between my hip and the handlebars, but not a drastic difference. If you fit on one, you're going to fit on the other, and you can see easily touching the ground on both these bikes. One thing you do have here is because there's no exhaust running up beyond my feet, we'll show you that in a minute, it's down the bottom, it just doesn't come in the way, it doesn't come in play at all. The other thing you're going to notice is there's a larger rear seat here than on the 500. So if you're taking a passenger, you got a little more grunt in the engine and you have a little bit better seat for them. 650 is probably the way to go if you're regularly taking a passenger, but both bikes are capable of taking a passenger, especially around town. Just want to briefly show you the seat here on the 500 and 650. The seat has been changed in angle from the 400. I never found the 400 to be particularly uncomfortable, but they've sort of switched the angle and switched everything around here. It is more comfortable now than it used to be. So for people saying it's a direct copy of the 400 seat onto the 500, that's not true. They have redesigned it for some comfort. The 400 used to lean you a little bit more into the tank, where this one kind of levels you out. And again, it's just a little bit more comfortable. Rear seat here, super useful for strapless stuff too if you need to. You can do all kinds of things. There are some hooks down here on the 500 right there. I don't know if you can see them right there. A little way to strap stuff on. But that's the 500 seat. Let's do the same basic view on the 650 now. Taking a similar perspective here on the 650, seats again, pretty decent on both, no complaints on either. This one might look a little more cushy. I don't know that one's particularly more comfortable. You do have more of this back seat behind you. The last one sort of had a point behind. This one has a little bit more of a back seat, and it's a larger seat there. Again, this comes off as well. There are no hooks underneath here to strap luggage to. Of course, anytime you have a rear seat like that, you can tend to find tail bags if you need to put something on there. But a little bit better for passengers on this one, maybe a little bit better for luggage on the other one. You can see in the corner of the shot here, maybe the corner of the last shot, there's LED lights. I want to talk briefly about those really quickly, and then we'll move on and we'll take a look at the dashes and the controls where there are some differences. So one of the key differences between the Z and the Ninja is the fact that the headlight and actually the signal lights turn with the handlebars. So some people really like that just for getting people's attention, maybe if you're stopped at traffic or something like that, or even just wiggling a little bit on a slow speed drive approaching traffic. But you also have a trigger here. You can flash that high beam. This is an LED light. We'll leave it off for a second. Actually, we can maybe turn it on. I don't know if it turns on. Yeah, it turns on with the key without starting the engine. So nice bright white LED light. Both these have LED lights. The one difference you're going to see is this one has an LED signal light. The 500 does not as equipped, but it's available. Let's talk about that as we move to the 500 really quickly. So over here on the 500, we'll see if the light comes on with this key. Yep, it does as well. So same sort of idea down here, a little more aggressive face potentially, but same bright white lights. I mean, I shouldn't say same lights. They are a different design here, but same idea. They move with the handlebars. But when you signal over here, you can see you have incandescent bulbs over here instead of LED. Now, if you remember the LED from the last shot, if you get the Z500 SE, one of the upgrades is full LED lighting, including the LED signal light. So if you like this bike but wish it had LED signals, the 500 SE is available, and that will have the updated signal lights. It depends on if that really matters to you or not, but that is available on this bike. It's not available on just the S model. You got to move, or on the regular model, you got to move to the SE model. So taking a look at the dash here, as we turn the dash on, you're going to see it come to life. Currently, it is set to that white color. You can invert these colors and set it to the black color as well. We're going to zoom in there just for a second and come up. Now, the Z500 that I am reviewing today has the same dash basically available on it, but it is not on the bike we're going to show you today. Again, that's the SE and regular model. So we'll show you this dash briefly. This one does not connect to Bluetooth and give you the Rideology app connection. The 500 does in both levels, but other than that, the dash can be available like this if you get the 500 SE. Now in this one, you've got the traction control. You won't have the traction control in the 500 line. So that is something to have, that's a nice option here. You can go traction control off, and then you can go up to level 1 and level 2. What I generally do is keep it on level 1 on this bike. That doesn't have a whole lot of intervention for most people. and gives you that safety margin. Level 2 would be more for the rain, and you can turn it off as well. This engine's not crazy powerful. It's not going to scare you, but it'll do wheelies and stuff like that, and it will slide a little bit. So if you have cold tires especially. So traction control is really nice to have here. And this is Kawasaki's typical dash. Gives you a really good gear indicator here. Gives you a nice clear rev range. It's a TFT display that's super clear. There's just no pixelation in real life. When you video a digital dash, it never shows as well as real life, but it is very, very good. Down here, you've got a number of things. You've got the odometer up top. We're going to cycle through those for a second. Trip A, trip B, and the odometer. So that was on this second row right here. You've got constant coolant temperature up there. And then if you go to the bottom, currently it says kilometers per liter. So that would be your instant fuel efficiency. Now you can set that to liters per 100 kilometers. You can set that to miles per gallon US, miles per gallon UK. All of that's available, but that's your instant. Of course, since it's not running or moving, it just gives you dashes. Then you go into your average. So they've driven this bike 1 kilometer and gotten 5 kilometers per liter, but of course, that doesn't tell you anything when you've driven a brand new bike, only 1 kilometer. Then you go into your range, which again calculates as you're driving, and it can update as you're driving, so it can move up or down even if you're driving. If you're driving more efficiently, it'll start giving you a little bit more range, but it's a guesstimate of what you're gonna get based on how you have been driving. Average speed is in there, which is nice. Total time, you have battery voltage, and then you're back to the beginning again. Over here is your fuel gauge, nice and clear. If it gets very low, I believe it goes red, but it definitely goes to the last bar, and then the last bar starts flashing. So it's actually kind of like 2 bars when you have 1 bar left, just to give you a little extra warning in the sense that from a display perspective, it's not just that it's solid, it'll go and start flashing. Actually, I think the next bike is low on fuel. You'll see it flashing as well. Very clear display. I like the black color better. I usually film that, so I'm leaving it on the white this time to show you. Obviously, the clock there in the bottom is always available. So this dash is available on the Z500 without the traction control, but with some Bluetooth connectivity to connect to that Rideology app. This bike comes as it is. I just want to quickly show you the controls as well on this bike, and then we'll move over and show you the dash and controls on the Z500. So the controls on both bikes are going to be similar, but there is a couple differences, and I'll show you that right now. First of all, what's the same is you have a flash to pass button here that you can't quite see on your screen, but it is a little trigger there, so you can see I'm flashing it. That will just, as you hold it in, it'll hold your high beam on. As you release it, it'll turn it off. So you just nice quick flashing, get people's attention. If you want to leave your high beam on, that's what you do. Low beam signals right there. Yeah, nice quality switches on all the Kawasaki's. Horn down the very bottom, and you do have a hazard warning light on this bike, which has always been on it. Hasn't always been on the 400, but you'll see the 500 does have it as well, but a different style. This is really the different switch. So when I hit that select button in the center, that's what activated the traction control to start blinking. Once you tap it, it starts blinking, and then you can switch up or down, from off to level 1 and level 2 using this. When you don't hit that select button and you just have these buttons sitting there, this one controls the upper display, so just the odometer, trip odometer, and this one controlled the lower display, which was the fuel efficiency, time, battery voltage, all that kind of stuff. So very easy to control stuff, and I gotta give Kawasaki some credit. Some other bikes have a little bit more options in there, but it gets incredibly confusing. There are 2 more buttons to get into menu items on the bottom of this screen right here and right there. But that's really how you go into the settings. As far as everything you need while you're riding, super, super simple control system right here by just using that. So we got to give them credit. Now, one more thing here that you will see on the 650 that is not on the 500 is the adjustable levers here. So levers. So clutch lever and brake lever both have an adjustment there. It's basically set to the middle, but that can move this bar out or further away. A lot of people think that's just for smaller hands or larger hands, but it actually changes where the grab point would be of the clutch or the brake as well. So you have that flexibility here on the clutch and brake pedal on the 650. So again, nice little upgrades. Now let's take a look at the downgrade, which is the Z500, and we'll show you it's pretty good as well. So this is the Z500. Now remember, the Z500 SE can have the same display as we just looked at. This one's different. It's got the 2 buttons on the side instead of on the bottom, and although it is a digital display, it's not a TFT display. Frankly, at this level of bike, this doesn't bother me at all. It still presents the information essentially the same. Your first few revs, like a lot of motorcycles, kind of jam together, but all the revs you need to see from 3,500 on to 10,000 there is, or actually 11,000 RPM red line is all very clear. You've got your digital speedometer, you've got your gear indicator over there, your warning lights are off to the side and on top, and then you still have the ability to switch through. Now you can't do it from the handlebar as well, but you can see trip A, trip B. There's your kilometers per liter, which again can be liters per 100 kilometers, miles per gallon US and UK as well. so you can cycle through that. And then you have your average, so instant and average, all the same stuff. Range, which is this, we talked about range before, and then back to odometer. So you don't have your battery, you don't have a timer, but you have basically all the stuff that most people are going to use. You can see there's a little bit of app light blinking. It's it says app on the very top, and it has like a Wi-Fi symbol. It's not actually Wi-Fi, it's Bluetoothing to your Rideology app. So even on this base level Z500, you have that capability, even though you don't have the same dash. So that's pretty nice to have as well. To be very honest, this dash doesn't bother me at all. Again, it's clearer in person than you see on camera. It is the downgrade. You can see that the other one is a TFT display, where this one is just, you know, not a TFT. It's a different kind of digital dash, but works fine, very legible. I'm perfectly happy with this dash. The other one might look a little more high-end to some people, but again, no issues for readability or usability from my perspective in any way. So taking a look at the controls here, you can see a little better angle of the flash to pass type button here. This is a different overall section, and this is a slightly different shaped switch here as well. But I mean, same exact functionality. If you hold it down, it's going to be holding your high beam on. And if you just do this, it's going to blink it a bunch of times, holding your light on there. Signals are the same. Headlight switch seems to be pretty close to the same. This one might be a hair narrower. Signals and horn down there. And then the different style of four-way flasher or hazard lighting switch. The other one you slide across over here. This one has a push button up top. I think it's really important on a lower displacement bike, or you know, some people call this an entry-level bike. It's really important to have that hazard light. Not every bike does, especially as you get into the lower displacement bikes where they start cutting some corners for budget reasons. Nice to have this if you got to stop somewhere, do some navigation, whatever you're going to do. Nice to have that. Even if you just like hit into traffic and, you know, maybe you're at nighttime and you want to just let people know, hey, I'm slowing down. Just gives them a little bit extra visibility to flash it on a couple times, make people see a little bit better. So really nice to have that. On the other side of the bike, basically the exact same controls on both bikes. We'll just come across. You got a start button at the bottom there in black right there, and you got the kill switch up here. That appears to be identical, as do the grips. They appear to be identical. We'll just come out a little bit. We'll show you the clutch lever here. No adjustment, as you can see down there. I will say the 500 has a much lighter clutch pull than the 650. Both are pretty good, but the 500 and just some of this class, I think the Versus 300 is probably the lightest clutch that I've ever pulled, and the 500s are not much heavier than that. So again, going through town, both these bikes are fine, but if you're doing a lot of in town, this one is a little bit lighter pull, and that may make a difference to you. All right, so I know you've probably checked out the website at some point, or if you haven't, then you're gonna do it at the end of this video, and you can see the spec difference between them if that's what really matters to you. We've showed you some of the practicality differences between the two. So now let's talk about who should buy which bike. Well, first of all, both of these bikes are true and honest motorcycles in my opinion. They don't have a whole bunch of electronic wizardry, although this one does have traction control. They don't have drive modes, they don't have quick shifters, stuff like that. So you're gonna be learning to drive and ride properly on these bikes without any mistakes. They haven't got, you know, some of the ones you can release the clutch a little bit wrong and it'll just correct it for you from other brands. But these are gonna teach you how to ride well, and they're both easy to ride. They don't need some of those electronic things to make a difficult bike to ride easier. So you're getting that, and I think if you're looking for that in an honest, learn to really ride a motorcycle, know that the electronics aren't assisting you, just know that you're doing it on your own. These are both great bikes. If budget is your biggest concern, go for the 500. You will not be disappointed, and despite what a lot of people will tell you online, I don't think you have to move up from this all that much. A lot of people are addicted to speed when they get on motorcycles, and if that's the case, you're gonna wanna go faster and faster and faster and faster, and maybe you'll never be satisfied. This bike is plenty quick enough. It's faster than, you know, almost every car out there from a 0 to 60 type sprint. It's got the oomph and grunt to have a lot of fun. And to me, it's not purely about speed, it's about fun. And I mean, you could make the same argument with this. You shouldn't look at this if speed is your thing, because you can get the next fastest, the next fastest, and the next fastest. So we kind of have to agree that your goal is not ultimate speed if you're looking at both of these bikes, but I think this one is a really good value, probably the best value, smaller displacement, 500cc and under bike you can get, because it is cheaper than the Ninja, it gives you a lot of practicality, and it is a lot of fun. It's the whole Ninja package with a little different body style on that. So this is very, very good. What you're getting when you move up to this is, like I said, that bigger engine gives you a little bit more torque, a little bit more grunt. You are getting a tire size that might make this bike a little less easily flickable from side to side, but it's still very flickable. That's really the joy of these 500s, is they are so fun because you can do things on them that you just can't do on a bigger bike. And that's one thing remembering about these 500s is once you move on from that to get more power or more something else, you will never have that feeling again. It's like driving a little bit more of a go-kart compared to a bit more of a sports car, right? You still have a feeling on a go-kart you can't replicate when you move to a bigger, heavier bike. But that bigger engine, a little bit heavier bike, still very flickable, still very, very fun. I really like this 650 class. I drove this engine in a Versys 650 that I owned for years. It is really, really good. It gives you enough grunt to pull. You can drive fast, you can drive through town and slow, you can do anything you want to do on this engine. Anything, it just works really well. You can take it to the racetrack. You can take both these to the racetrack. The benefit here, the extra stopping power is notable. It's not that this one has poor brakes, but you really kind of are almost over braked on this bike. You've got plenty of stopping power with the dual discs. ABS is there to help you out as well. And again, the tire size you can split. Coming standard with the dash, having the traction control, pretty nice options to have just for all weather kind of riding. And if you are taking a passenger, this is going to be the better bike. The more torque, the better seat on the back. It's just going to be better. Now, keep in mind, if you're regularly taking the passenger, there is the Versys 650 as well, shares an engine with this, shares the tires. It does, or I think it shares the tires. It may have a slight different model, but tire sizing is all the same. But what it does is give you a better two-person bike, a better touring type bike. So longer rides, this one maybe, although that one's become more comfortable. Larger riders, this one's probably best. But really beyond that, you've seen the differences and you can make some decisions for yourself. So tell me in the comments which one you like better and why. And you know, I think some of those upgrades may work their way over to here, like the app connectivity, that kind of thing. But either one, I can tell you from a pure fun perspective, and I know somebody's gonna hit me in the comments, well, this bike and this bike and this bike has more features and specs, it's better this and that way. But from a pure fun and usability perspective, either one of these bikes are gonna be excellent to ride. And right now, at Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, they're both on discounts, so you can end of season type stuff right now. It's a good time to buy a bike and have it ready for you in the spring. You can make arrangements with them if you want to take it home now, or I think if you're watching this later into the winter, they can work with you as well. So really good bikes, depending on which one you want. Which one would I buy? Probably the 500. I've enjoyed the 650 for a while. Really like that 500. It's really good, and for the money, it's just one of the best bikes out there for 500cc. So there you go. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.